My parents told me they wouldn't come to my graduation ceremony because my brother needed help moving into his new apartment that weekend. I was 22. I'd worked 2 jobs through college. I didn't say anything. I just said, okay, and hung up the phone and sat on the floor of my dorm room for a long time staring at nothing. That was the first time I told myself it was fine. It wasn't the last. I'm 31 now, and I've been telling myself things were fine for a long time. I've gotten pretty good at it. My therapist, I started seeing one about 2 years ago. She called it adaptive minimizing. A very clinical way of saying I learned to make myself smaller so the room felt big enough for everyone. My brother's name is Wesley. He's 3 years older than me, and from the time we were kids, he occupied a different atmosphere in our house. Not a different room, a different atmosphere. The rules that applied to me simply didn't apply to him. And no one ever explained why, and eventually I stopped asking. He dropped out of college after 1 semester. My parents paid off his student loans without a second thought. I took out $34,000 in federal loans and paid every cent myself over 8 years. When I mentioned that once, gently, not as an accusation, just as a fact, my mom said, "Well, you've always been the capable one." She said it like it was a compliment. I met my husband at work. His name is Nathan. He's a structural engineer, quiet in the way that still water is quiet, calm on the surface but with a lot going on underneath. He noticed things about my family before I did, or maybe before I was willing to. He never said anything unkind about them. He just asked questions. Careful, patient questions. Did they ask how your presentation went? Did anyone call you back about that? How did that make you feel? At first, those questions annoyed me. Then they scared me. Then I understood why he was asking them. We got engaged on a Thursday night in October. Nothing dramatic. He'd made dinner at home, the good pasta he only makes on special occasions, and he had the ring in his jacket pocket, and he asked me while we were doing dishes, which sounds unromantic but was actually the most us thing imaginable. I cried. He dried his hands on the dish towel and hugged me for a long time. We picked our wedding date in November, June 14th of the following year, 7 months out. We booked the venue first. A restored farmhouse about 40 minutes outside of the city, the kind of place with string lights in the trees and an old stone barn for the reception. We put down a $3,000 non-refundable deposit. Then we booked the caterer, the photographer, the florist. By January, we were locked in everywhere. I called my parents to tell them about the date before we booked anything. My mom said it was beautiful. My dad said he was proud of me. My brother, apparently on the call too, said nothing. But I could hear him breathing. Everything was fine until April. My mom called on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk at work, and I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She said, "Honey, we need to talk about June." I said, "What about June?" She said, "Your brother has been planning a fishing trip to Alaska. He's been looking forward to it for months. He already paid for flights and a guide service and a cabin up there." She paused. "It's the same weekend as your wedding." I sat very still. "Okay," I said. "We were thinking. And I know this is a lot to ask, but we were thinking, since you're the one with more flexibility, maybe you could look into moving the date. Just by a week or 2. Wesley has already paid deposits that aren't refundable." "Mom," I said, "I have deposits that aren't refundable. I booked this date in November, 7 months ago." "I know, sweetheart, but my brother booked a fishing trip on the same weekend as my wedding." Silence. "He didn't realize," she said. "He was on the phone when I told you the date." More silence. "Your father and I have talked about it, and we think the most mature thing would be to find a compromise." I told her I needed to think. I hung up and sat at my desk and stared at my computer screen until the words blurred. Then I went to the bathroom and stood at the sink running cold water over my wrists until I felt like a person again. I called Nathan on my lunch break. I stood outside on the sidewalk, half a sandwich in my hand, and told him what my mother had said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We are not changing the date. Not what do you think? Not should we? Just we are not changing the date." That certainty, I held onto it like a handhold on a cliff face. I called my mother back that evening and told her we wouldn't be moving the date. I said it as gently as I could. I said we had thousands of dollars locked in with multiple vendors, that our guests had already booked travel, that this wasn't something we were able to change. My mother said she understood. Her voice said the opposite. For the next 3 weeks, I heard nothing from her. Then she called again. "Your father and I have made a decision," she said. "We've decided we're going to go to Alaska with Wesley." I said nothing. "He really needs us there. You know how he gets when he's going through a hard time." Wesley was 34 years old. He was a full-grown man going on a recreational fishing trip to Alaska. I was getting married. "Mom," I said, "you're choosing a fishing trip over my wedding." "We are choosing your brother," she said. "The same way we hope you choose family." I did not cry on the phone. I have never cried on the phone with my mother. I don't know exactly when I decided that. I think it was sometime in middle school, some argument I don't remember, and something in me just quietly closed a door. I cried after I hung up. I cried in the bathroom again, sitting on the edge of the tub, and Nathan came and sat next to me and didn't say anything, just put his hand on my back. "Do you want me to call them?" he asked. "No," I said. "Not yet." I told myself I was protecting everyone. I think I was protecting myself from the full weight of what was happening. The weeks before the wedding were a blur of flowers and seating charts and dress fittings and forced smiles. My maid of honor, my college roommate, Simone, knew something was wrong. She's known me for 10 years and she can read me like a billboard. One night over wine, she asked me directly, and I told her, and she sat very quietly for a long time and then said, "I want to say something very not nice about your parents right now." "Please don't," I said. She didn't. She just refilled my glass. Nathan had said very little about my parents since the first conversation. I could feel him thinking, though. There's a quality to his silence when he's processing something, a stillness that's different from his regular stillness. And I felt it constantly in those weeks. I didn't ask. Part of me was afraid of what he'd found. The week before the wedding, he came home from work and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. He had his laptop with him. "I need to show you something," he said. I looked at him, "And I need you to hear me out before you react." I said, "Okay." He turned the laptop toward me. It was a bank statement, not mine. My parents' joint account. Or rather, a screenshot of a transaction record my mother had accidentally forwarded to Nathan months ago when she'd been fumbling through email, something she'd sent to him instead of a friend, and he'd kept it because something about the number felt wrong. The transaction was dated 14 months earlier, a transfer of $22,000 to Wesley. I stared at it. Nathan said carefully, "Do you remember your grandmother's account?" My grandmother, my mother's mother, had passed away 4 years earlier. She'd left behind a modest estate, most of it split among her children. But she'd also set up individual savings accounts for each grandchild to be transferred to us through our parents when we turned 30. Mine was supposed to be about $18,000. I turned 38 months ago. I'd never received it. When I'd asked my mother about it, she'd said the estate was still being settled and that these things took time. I looked at the number on the screen. $22,000. "She used mine," I said. Nathan nodded and added to it. "I think so," he said. "I don't know for certain, but that's what it looks like." I sat back in my chair. I thought about my grandmother who'd smelled like lavender and kept butterscotch candies in her cardigan pocket, who'd called me every Sunday until she got too sick to dial the phone, who'd told me once that she wanted to make sure I had a soft landing when the time was right. She'd said that. A soft landing. The room was very quiet. "What do you want to do?" Nathan asked. "Nothing," I said. "Not until after the wedding. I can't deal with this right now." He closed the laptop. He said, "Okay, and he didn't bring it up again until I did. June 14th came with perfect weather. 72 degrees, a few high clouds, the kind of light that makes everything look like it's in a movie. The farmhouse was exactly what we'd imagined. The string lights came on at dusk. The stone barn smelled like cedar and old wood. There were 140 guests. My parents were not among them. I'd known they wouldn't be. I'd known for weeks. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was okay. I told Simone I was okay. I told Nathan I was okay. I'm not okay. There's a moment during the ceremony where the officiant asked who supported this union, and traditionally the parents speak, and I adjusted the ceremony so that it was just an open affirmation from the guests, and everyone said, "We do," and it was beautiful. And I heard it from a strange distance, like I was watching myself from above. Nathan held my hands during the vows. He looked at me the way he always looks at me, like I'm the most interesting thing in any room, and said words he'd written himself. And I felt them land in me somewhere deep and real, and I thought, this is enough. This has to be enough. The reception was loud and warm and full of people who love us. Simone gave a toast that made people cry. Nathan's mom danced to every song. There was a moment, maybe an hour in, when things felt genuinely perfect. Then Nathan clinked his glass. The room quieted. He stood up and he looked comfortable. Nathan always looks comfortable. It's one of the things I love about him. And he smiled at me first. The small private smile that means something different from his public smile. I'm going to say something tonight that maybe belongs in a different setting, he said. But I think the people in this room deserve to understand who they're celebrating. People were very still. Most of you know that this woman has been planning this wedding for 7 months. You know she booked this venue, hired every person here, chose every detail of tonight with patience and care. What some of you might not know is that 2 months ago, her parents called and asked her to move this date. Not for an emergency, not for an illness, not for anything that couldn't wait, but because her brother had scheduled a vacation for the same weekend. The room was very quiet. She handled that with more grace than I would have. She said no, calmly. And she kept planning, and she kept showing up, and she got herself to this barn on this perfect June night without her parents here, and she has not said one unkind word about them, not one. He looked at me, but I also want her to know, and I want you all to know, that I've been doing some quiet work of my own, because there was another thing she didn't know or didn't let herself know. He paused. Her grandmother left her money, set aside specifically for her, to be given when she turned 30. She turned 38 months ago. That money was transferred, quietly, without her knowledge or consent, to her brother 14 months ago. Somewhere in the room, someone made a sound. I want my wife to know that I have already spoken with a probate attorney. I want her to know that we have documentation. And I want her to know that she is not crazy, she did not imagine it, and she has never once been too much. She has always been exactly enough. He raised his glass. To the woman who deserved a soft landing, I intend to spend my life making sure she has one. I don't remember exactly what happened after that. I remember the sound in the room, not applause right away, just this collective exhale, like everyone had been holding their breath. I remember Simone's face. I remember Nathan sitting back down and reaching for my hand under the table and squeezing it once. I didn't cry at the ceremony. I cried then, just for a moment, quietly, into his shoulder. The next morning, I called my mother. I didn't plan to. I just woke up and reached for my phone and dialed before I'd fully decided to. She answered on the second ring, which surprised me. I'd expected voicemail. How was it? She asked. And her voice was careful in a way that made me understand she'd heard something or sensed something. My mother has always been perceptive about things she doesn't want to deal with. It was beautiful, I said. Mom, I need to talk to you about Grandma's money. A pause. Long enough to be a confession. That's complicated, she said. I know it's complicated, she said. I have documentation. Nathan and I have already talked to an attorney. I'm not calling to fight with you. I'm calling because I want to give you the chance to make this right before it becomes something that can't be made right. Another long pause. Wesley needed it, she said. He was in trouble. I know, I said. He's often in trouble. And I'm often not, because I've spent my whole life making sure I wasn't. But that money wasn't yours to give. She didn't say anything. I want it back, I said. I want a plan for getting it back, and I want us to have an honest conversation. Maybe with someone professional to help about what's been happening in this family for a long time. She cried. She said she was sorry. She said things that I'd wanted to hear for years and that didn't feel like enough and also somehow still mattered. I don't know how it will all end. Families are slow, complicated things, and mine is no exception. Wesley has not called. My dad sent a text that said, "We're sorry we missed it," and a photo of a fish he'd caught in Alaska, which I think was accidental. My mother has agreed to speak with a therapist. The attorney has sent a formal letter. These things take time. What I know is this. On June 14th, in a stone barn strung with lights, my husband stood up in front of every person we love and told the truth out loud so I didn't have to carry it alone anymore. I have the photograph from that moment. Nathan standing, glass raised, looking at me. Me at the table next to him, mid-cry, half laughing, hand pressed to my mouth. My grandmother wanted me to have a soft landing. I think I finally have one. There's a version of the story where I never find out about the money, where I keep telling myself everything is fine, keep making myself smaller, keep accepting you've always been the capable one, as though capability is supposed to be its own reward. I lived inside that version for a long time. I didn't know I was living in it, which is the thing about stories like this. You can't see the shape of something when you're standing inside it. What I've come to understand is that the way things unfold is rarely random. My parents made choices. Wesley made choices. And for years, I made choices too. Mostly the choice to look away, to smooth things over, to protect a version of family harmony that was really just my own silence dressed up nicely. That has a cost. It accumulated quietly, the way debt does, and eventually the number gets too large to ignore. Nathan didn't save me. I want to be clear about that. What he did was stand in a room full of people and say true things out loud. But the reason it landed the way it did, the reason I finally let myself cry, was because I had already done the harder work of admitting, privately, that something was wrong. That my grandmother's money hadn't just gotten lost in paperwork, that the estate is still being settled had never quite sounded right. I knew. I had known for a while. What I lacked was the clarity to trust what I knew. That's the thing I keep turning over. Knowing something and trusting what you know are two completely different skills. One is information, the other is courage. My whole life I'd been praised for being capable and self-sufficient, and somewhere along the way I confused self-sufficiency with not needing anything to be different. I confused competence with acceptance. It took standing in a barn in a wedding dress without my parents to finally understand that those things are not the same. I think about Simone refilling my wine glass without saying anything unkind. I think about Nathan asking careful questions for years before he ever said a word about what he suspected. I think about my grandmother who saved that money slowly and deliberately, who said she wanted me to have a soft landing, who understood something about me that I hadn't fully understood about myself yet, that I would need it, that I would earn it, that I deserved it. The people who love you well tend to be patient. They don't announce themselves. They just keep showing up with the right thing and the right time. I'm still working through what comes next with my family. These things don't resolve cleanly. My mother has cried and apologized. My father has said very little. Wesley has said nothing. The attorney is patient and methodical. I am trying to be both firm and fair, which is harder than just being one or the other. But I got married on a perfect June night in a stone barn, strung with lights, surrounded by people who showed up on purpose. And at some point during the reception, when the dancing started and the noise filled the old cedar-smelling space, I looked around and thought, this is what I built. Not by being endlessly agreeable, not by shrinking, by deciding finally that what I knew was worth trusting and that what I deserved was worth asking for. My grandmother wanted me to have a soft landing. I think I'm finally learning how to let myself land.